forte marking. Anytime you see these fancy-looking letters in music, those are called dynamic markings, and they tell you how loud or soft to play.
By Hoffman
F
Academy.
stands for forte, which means to play
Wala po
with
akong teacher
strength,
kasi
loudly.
yun po, self-study po.
And whenever you
Tapos
see a
sa
dynamic
YouTube lang
mark,
po
all
ako
the notes that come
talaga.
after it, starting with the note it is lined up with,
Aral
all
po
of
tayo
these notes
ng
will be played
notes.
forte. Then you might have noticed this repeat sign, so we'll go back and play it again, forte. Play all those notes. Now, down here on line 2, we have another dynamic marking. And P stands for piano. Now, the piano obviously means the thing with black and white keys that you play on, but piano also has another meaning. Piano in Italian also means soft. So all of these notes you'll play softly. Now, other things we should always check out are the clefs. We have our treble clef for this top staff, and down here we have a bass staff. Today we'll just be learning the notes on the treble staff. And then we should check our time signature. Our time signature is 4/4, and that top number tells us how many beats we will have in every measure. Now, let's check out the rhythm of line 1 of bagpipe. Can you point and speak the rhythm words with me? We're going to say ta for the quarter notes, tt for the eighth notes, and tu for the half note. Let's say it together with a good steady beat. Can you point on your screen with me and let's say the rhythm words. Ready, go. Ta, 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 ti, ti, ta, 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 ta.
Nag-aaral po ng dynamics or beat. Kung paano po ang beat.
And then it repeats.
Na sa music
Now,
theory.
instead of going back and doing the repeat, let's work on counting the beat, which we've recently learned how to do. Remember, there's 2 ways to count rhythms. We can use the rhythm syllables like we just did, ta and tt, or we can count the beat while we tap the rhythms. So, every quarter note gets 1 beat, so that measure would just be 1, let me point up here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, here in measure 2, remember that 2 eighth notes share a beat. So I put a circle around them to remind you that everything in that circle is 1 beat. Here's beat 1, here's beat 2, here's beat 3, and here's beat 4. Make that a little bit darker. There's beat 4. So we have beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4. So while you're saying 2, you actually have to tap twice, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes people say 2 and 3, but I just like to say 2 once. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you count that beat with me while you tap that rhythm? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Then this measure we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. This half note gets 2 beats, so it's 3, 4. There's kind of this invisible beat 4. This half note takes up 2 beats, so you have to think of both of those beats. Even though it's invisible, remember that it's still there, even if you can't see it. The end of that measure. So try tapping this measure with me and counting. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you say 3 and 4, but you only tap on beat 3, and then you hold through beat 4. Great. Now let's try this whole line together while you count out loud and tap the beat with me. You can just tap on your lap or on any other flat surface nearby. So tap and count. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, one last thing I want to analyze before we play this, and that is to hunt for any skips. You should be pretty good by now at recognizing steps and skips. Remember, a step always goes from a line to a space, or a space to a line. So here it's easy to see. Those are stepping down. But how do you those, and I'm going to use a blue highlighter to help me identify where there are any skips. And this is the skip of a third. So I'm going to write a 3 right there. And I encourage you to do this in your own sheet music, which you can download from our website. So we've got a third there. These are just steps, so I won't mark those. Then we step up, step up, step up, step down. Aha, here's another skip. Skip of a third again. Skip down. Now, can you find 2 more skips on this line?
Good boy deserve
Probably found one here. We skip up. Can you tell me the interval from this G to that D? You said a fifth. You're correct. You can think of a fifth like a double skip. It goes from a line, skip a line, to another line. So that's all the way from do to so. And then we've got another skip of a third down here from mi to do. Now, it looks like we've done an awesome job analyzing the rhythms, the intervals, the dynamics. So, let's come to the piano keys and try to play it. First item of business is figuring out where to place our hand. So, to do that, we always look at the first note and see if there's a finger number there. There is. So, we know we'll be starting on finger 5, right hand. And what note do we need to place finger 5 on? Can you tell me the letter name of this note?
D.
You said D, you're correct. One easy way to figure that out is to use our guide notes. Remember that treble C is this third space up. Here's my middle C. Here's treble C, and we see that the starting note is just one step above that. So with 5 on D, you'll see that our fingers fall into the G major pentascale. Now, instead of me teaching this song to you, because you're getting so good at reading notes now, let's have you figure out the first 4 notes on your own. You know that it starts with finger 5 on D. Now, looking at the notes, can you figure out how to play them? Press pause and try the first 4 notes on your own, and then I'll show you so you can see if you got it right. Okay, you should have played D, C, B, G, or in solfege, so, fa, mi, do. We step down, and then skip down. Okay, let's try playing that together and sing the solfege. We start on so. Ready? Play with me. Go. So, fa, mi, do. Very good. Now, the next measure I'd also like you to figure out on your own without my help. So we just finished on do, and now what's happening? We're going to step up, and then I'll let you figure it out from there. This one's a little trickier because you have those 2 eighth notes. So first, I'd like you on your own to give it a try, see if you can play those notes, and press pause to work that measure out on your own, and then press play and we'll do it together. Okay, this measure starts on a re, then steps up to mi, steps up to fa, steps back down to mi, then skips down to do. And then in rhythm we have re, mi, fa, mi, do, because it's ta, ti, ti, ta, ta. Let's try to play that together. Start with finger 2 on re, and let's play it. Go. Re, mi, fa, mi, do. Good. Now, let's put those 2 measures together. I'll play it once, and then you play it. My turn first. So, fa, mi, do. Re, mi, fa, mi, do. Now you try it by yourself. Go.
Ay, ganun pala. So, fa, mi, do.
Good. Now you can press pause if you need extra practice with that. Otherwise, let's go on to the next 2 measures. What do you notice about measure 3? If you notice it's the same as measure 1, you are correct. Once again, we have a so, fa, mi, do. So let's play that. Go. So, fa, mi, do. And then, can you tell me the solfege for these last 3 notes of the line? If you said re, re, do, you're correct. you to press pause and work on all of line 1 until you can play it confidently. Try singing the solfege as you play, then try it again and sing the rhythm words or count the beat as you play. And then press play to go on. Now we're ready for line 2. So the first thing we should do is take a look at the notes and see what's the same and what's different. Because remember, music is filled with patterns, so there may be some patterns we've already learned, or maybe every note is different. We've got to figure that out. So looking at measure 1 of line 2, does it start off the same or different from line 1? If you said different, you're correct. Remember in line 1, we had that so, fa, mi, do. Now this time we're starting on do, which in this piece, since we're in G major, the key of G major, we are starting on do this time and stepping up. We also happen to be piano this time. So this pattern is new. Can you find any skips in this measure? Point to it. If you're pointing here, you're correct. So in your music, let's mark that with a 3 to remind us that's a third down. We're going to skip down there. Now, can you find 3 more skips from across the next 5 notes? There's one here. Can you tell me what interval from this G to that C? You said a 4th, you're correct. Then there's another skip here. We're going down. What interval? Can you tell me the interval? You said a 3rd, you're correct. A 3rd will always be a line to a line like this, or a space to a space like this. Now, is this a skip? No, that's just a step up, which we can also call a second. We're talking in intervals. But here is another skip down of a 3rd. So here's another pattern that we haven't seen before. So far these first 2 measures are unique. That makes this a contrasting line. Now let's take a look at these 2 measures. Have you seen this pattern before in the music? If you said yes, you're correct. This is the same pattern we saw in measure 2 of line 1. Go ahead and mark that skip down of a 3rd. And then what about re, re, do? Have we seen that before? Yes, we have. We saw it in the last measure of line 1. We just don't have those notes in between this time.
This video
so it's kind of a variation,
Mr.
but
Hoffman.
using patterns we've seen before.
Academy.
Now let's come to the piano and try and play it. Alright, for line 2,
piano.
we start on do, like we said. Can you tell me the solfege for these first 4 notes? If you said do, re, mi, do, you're correct. Let's try to play it together. Start with finger 1 on G, go. Do, re, mi, do. Very good. Now, let's look at measure 2. We skip up a 4th from do, which in solfege would be what? Do, re, mi, fa, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's fa. We have fa, skip down, step up, skip down. See how that forms a little pattern? Fa, re, mi, do. Try to play that with me. Ready, go. Fa, re, mi, do. So we have fa, skip down, step up, skip down. Now let's put those 2 measures together. My turn. Do, re, mi, do, fa, re, mi, do. Good. Now I'd like you to press pause and try that like 5 or 6 times until you can play it with no missed notes confidently. Then press play to go on. Now the second half of this line has a pattern we already learned from line 1. Remember, it starts on re. Re, mi, fa, mi, do. Can you play that with me? Ready, start on re, finger 2, go. Re, mi, fa, mi, do. Good, and then we finish with another pattern we've had before. Re, re, do. So putting that together, we have re, mi, fa, mi, do, re, re, do. Now your turn to try. Start on re, Now if we put all of line 2 together, and I'm going to play piano, because that's what the dynamics say, we'll get this. Do, re, mi, do, fa, re, mi, do, re, mi, fa, mi, do, re, do. Now I'd like you to press pause and work on that line several times, maybe 5, maybe 10 times, until you can play it with no missed notes. Then press play to go on. Now let's analyze line 3. Can you tell me what is the same and what is different from line 3 compared to either of our previous lines? Tell me what you
Hirap
notice.
naman.
If you notice that the notes are exactly the same as line 2, you're correct. It's important to check every single note because sometimes music will trick you and make a very small change. If you check every single note, they match exactly, except one thing. Can you tell me the one thing that's different about line 3? If you said the dynamics, you're correct. This forte mark is the only thing that's different from line 2 to line 3. So we're going to play the same notes again, but this time strong, with string or loudly. Hopefully saying the right words. Now, as you're practicing bagpipe, I have a few tips for you. And number 1 is to remember that bagpipe music is for marching, not running. This song shouldn't be played sloppy and fast like that. It's steady and it's stately. It's important music. And when you have these quarter notes, make sure they have a very steady beat. Ta, 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 ta. Do not rush those quarter notes. Keep them steady like marching soldiers. Ta, ti, ti, ta, ta. Okay? One way to help with that is to use our good friend, the metronome. I hope it's becoming your good friend. So if I put my metronome on, I recommend starting somewhere between 80 and 88 beats per minute. At 88, that would sound like this. Ta, ti, ti, ta, 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 two. If that's a little too fast, you can start at around 80. You should be able to play with no missed notes and no pauses at that speed, and then you can gradually speed it up to a maximum speed of about 112. So use the metronome. I wouldn't start with the metronome until you're confident with the notes. You can play through them. Then once you feel like you've got it, start using the metronome to keep the beat steady. Great job learning bagpipe today. On your own, please practice bagpipe every day until you are very confident with it. When I practice, I like to challenge myself to play an entire line with no missed notes. First 3 times, then maybe 5 times. I encourage you to try that too. Having a challenge for yourself, like playing a line without a single missed note, that can help you focus and can turn your practicing into a challenge myself to play an entire line with no missed notes. First 3 times.
What is the
Looking
next?
all along line 1. Do you ever play anything
left hands
else?
naman tayo.
No, it's all the same chord. And here is a half note, meaning we'll hold each of these chords for 2 beats. So as you're playing the left hand, one really easy way to think about this is to just count the beat. You're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. The tricky part will be making sure that it lines up properly with the right hand. Remember, when notes are aligned together, it means to play them together.
Okay.
So you play together on this D in the right hand with this chord. Then this note you play by itself. Then here we play together again. Beat 4 right hand plays by itself. Here we play together. These 2 eighth notes play by themselves. And then here we are together again.
Ano kaya?
Always on beat 1 and beat 3, we're playing together. Now let's try this on the piano. So we figured out that the lowest note of our chord is ground G. So if here's my middle C, can you point to where ground G is? If you're pointing here, you're correct. You have to go past 1G because that's the G a step above bass F, which is up higher on the bass staff. You've got to go all the way down to the next G to get to ground G. So here's my middle C, bass F, bass C, ground G is right there. So I need a G and a D a fifth above that. So get your hand in this position, your left hand that is, and I'd like you to count the beat out loud. So count 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you try this with me? Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop. Remember that as you play chords, there's a sense of falling and then floating back up. You want to keep your wrist relaxed. Drop with the weight of your arm and then relax. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try that with me. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Now, I will play both hands. I'd like you to just play the left hand and count out loud. I want to hear your voice counting the beat. Don't just think it in your head. Counting out loud will help. Trust me. Here we go. Your job is left hand. I'll do both hands. Count the beat. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hirap.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep counting. 3, 4.
Ay.
Now piano. Now forte. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mali.
Good. Now I want to remind you that louder does not mean faster. Sometimes when we go back to forte, we want to charge ahead, but that's not correct. Softer and louder doesn't mean faster and slower. Okay, we want to keep one steady beat throughout. Just change the dynamics without changing the speed. Good. Now that you've heard how those two hands fit together, I'd like to challenge you to press pause and try playing some or all of it hands together. I would start just with measure 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, let's try that right now. Can you play just those first 4 beats together? 1, 2, 3, 4. Place your right hand up here and the left hand down here. And let's try it. Try it on your own. Go. Good. You can press pause if you need some extra time. Otherwise, let's look at measure 2. Now we have re, mi, fa, mi, do. So we have beat 1, 2. In beat 2, you've got to play that T-T, ta, T-T, ta, ta. Now try measure 2. Good. When we put it together, it sounds like this. Ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I'd like you to press pause and work on those first 2 measures hands together. If you'd like to challenge yourself and try even more hands together, you can go for it. Eventually, you're going to learn the whole thing hands together. So, right now, press pause and work on however much you want to, hands together, and then press play to go on. When you're working on a song hands together, I encourage you to go really slow. Even if you can play the right hand by itself. That fast, when you first try hands together, you want to slow it way down. Because now your brain's having to work really hard. So I'm going to put my metronome at about 72 beats per minute to start off hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, help give my brain enough time to think about how the hands need to work together. Once I can do that with no missed notes, without a pause, then I'm going to gradually speed it up. So maybe then I'd go to 76 beats per minute, then maybe 80 beats per minute, then 84. And little by little, I'm only going to speed it up when I can play it confidently, no missed notes, and no pauses. Eventually I'll get it up to about 112.
Okay.
But I'm going to get there by starting slow. And I found that that's the fastest way to master a piece, is by going slow. So slow is fast. Now, a couple other tips for practicing this song. I encourage you to listen to it regularly on our listening album. On the listening album, I played the song for you so you can get used to how the hands sound when played together. The more you listen, the more you can get the music inside of you. So when you play, you know how to express it. Another tip is once you have it mastered and up to about 112 beats per minute, then you'll be ready to play along with our practice album backing track. Great job learning how to play bagpipe hands together. I encourage you to practice bagpipe every day and challenge yourself as you practice to always play your best and with your best piano posture. Happy practicing and see you next time.
Next video tayo. Hirap pala. Ay naku, ulit-ulit. Kailangan pala ulitin. Kasi hindi ko pa na-gets.
If you're pointing at it, lines up properly with the right hand. Remember, when notes are aligned together, it means to play them
Play
together.
together.
So you play
Ang
together
hirap.
on this D in the right hand with this chord. Then this note you play by itself.
D
Then here we play together again. Beat 4, right hand plays by itself. Here we play together. These two eighth notes play by themselves.
Dapat.
And then here we are together again. Always on beat 1 and beat 3. We're playing together. Now let's try this on the piano. So we figured out that the lowest note of our chord is ground G. So if here's my middle C, can you point to where ground G is? If you're pointing here, you're correct. You have to go past 1G because that's the G a step above bass F, which is up higher on the bass staff. You've got to go all the way down to the next G to get to ground G. So here's my middle C, bass F, bass C, ground G is right there. So I need a G and a D a fifth above that. So get your hand in this position, your left hand that is, and I'd like you to count the beat out loud. So count
Ulit pa.
1, 2, 3, 4. Can you try this with me? Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop. Remember that as you play chords, there's a sense of falling and then floating back up. You want to keep your wrist relaxed. Drop with the weight of your arm and then relax. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try that with me. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Now, I will play both hands. I'd like you to just play the left hand and count out loud. I want to hear your voice counting the beat. Don't just think it in your head. Counting out loud will help, trust me. Here we go. Your job is left hand. I'll do both hands. Count the beat. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You keep counting. 3, 4. Now piano. start just with measure 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, let's try that right now.
Kailangan na.
Can you play?
Paano ba GT? 1, 2, 1. Ay. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ay, mali. Ulit. GD. 1, 2, 3, 4. Isa lang patataas. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tan, 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 ulit, mabagal dapat. 1, 2, 3, finger exercise naman tayo. Ay, mali. pa ba yung isa pa? Next naman tayo ay beginner.
Pattern that good. Now, quick posture check. As you play, make sure that your wrist stays flexible. See how I kind of drop slightly and then it floats back up after each note. That helps you use arm weight to play. Also, check that your pinky isn't collapsing and that your fingers are all staying in their relaxed, curved shape. Let's try it one more time now with great piano posture. Go. Stepping up and stepping down and skipping up and down. Chord. Now let's try that with the left hand. Can you find an A major pentascale with your left hand? So I've got my finger 5 on A, white, white, black, white, white. Finger 3 on C sharp. Ready, go. Stepping up and stepping down and skipping up and down. Play our one chord. Good. Now, where would the 5-7 chord be in A major? Can you try and find it on your piano? If you found these 3 notes, you're correct.
7.
Remember that a 5-7 chord, if you're coming from a major chord, Do moves down a half step to T, the nearest possible note to the left, and Mi moves up a half step to Fa. So this would be our 5-7 chord in A major.
5-7.
But you can play with fingers 1, 2, and 5 if you're in the left hand, or fingers 5, 4, and 1 in the right hand. So when you play stepping and skipping, a bonus you can do is play the 1 chord, then play the 5-7 chord, then back to the 1 chord. That's an optional extension you can do on the end for bonus work, if you want that challenge. Now today I wanted to show you a more advanced technique called staccato. Staccato is a style of playing, or an articulation, they're sometimes called if you want to be fancy. It's an articulation used to make this kind of sound. This is called a staccato. When you play with a quick release of the note, it kind of makes a crisp, popping sound. It can be useful to create certain kinds of moods or feelings in music, like if you want to sound really mysterious. Staccato can be fun. It can also add a lot of excitement.
Ang hirap naman.
Now, to play a staccato, I want you to staff. Can you name the notes with me? Point, so, but remember that Mi and Fa have to be a half step apart. They're not going to be happy here, are they? Because they have this black key in between. That means we have a whole step instead of a half step. What can we do? We're going to need to take this third note and raise it a half step to C sharp.
Balik tayo sa bagpipe. Dito sa staff.
All on the right of middle C is the kingdom of treble clef,
C,
where everyone speaks in a high voice, like Mickey Mouse.
and
And
C.
then below middle C, this is the kingdom of bass clef, where everyone talks like this. So to find treble G, you find the G nearest above middle C, and bass F is the F, the nearest F below middle C.
Bass F.
Now let's look at some other guide notes on the staff. The C's. So I'm going to take away treble G and bass F,
F.
and let's find where the C's are. Do you remember where treble C is?
A.
If you're pointing right here, you're correct. Treble C is 3 space notes up, and it's the nearest C above middle C on the piano too. Right here. This is treble C. Take these off for a minute. Now,
Kain
do you
muna
remember
po
where
tayo
AC
ng
is?
orange. Break time. Break
That's right,
time
it's
muna
3
po.
spaces down. It's the opposite of treble C, which is 3 spaces
Hirap
up.
mag-aral.
And on your
Pero
piano,
sana
bass C will
kapag
be the nearest
matapos
C
ko yung
below
lesson na ito,
middle C,
nasa
kingdom of bass
lesson
clef.
4 na ako. Sana
Now let's talk about a couple other
bago
guide notes.
mag-December or December,
This I
na-achieve
call
ko na
flag
yung
F. It's the F line at the
pag-aaral ko ng
top
piano.
of the
Yung
treble clef
marunong na ako
staff.
sana.
The way you'll remember that is think of this as a
Nakakatugtog
long
na ako na.
flagpole, and this loop at the top
Ganito
is a
isa-isa
flag,
yung
and it goes right through the F line. This F on the piano is way up here above middle C, above treble C, all the way up here, flag F.
C
Now the line
above.
way at the bottom of bass clef I call ground G. G for ground, because it's at the very bottom, just like the ground
F.
is at the bottom of the sky. On the piano, you can find ground G way down here below bass C. Now let's put all of our guide notes back. I have treble G and bass F. We'll put them back on our piano
G.
as well.
And bass F.
You'll notice I made the Fs blue. We have a bass F down here in the kingdom of bass clef, and we have a flag F way up here in treble clef. We also have 2 Gs, a treble G, and then way down here, a bass G. And then we have 3 Cs as guide notes.
3C.
Let's practice naming all of the guide notes from the lowest to the highest on the staff. I'll say it and then you repeat after me. Ground G, bass C,
Ground G.
bass F,
Bass C.
middle C,
Bass F. Middle
treble
C.
G,
Treble G.
treble C,
Treble C.
flag F.
And flag F.
Now let's name them together on the piano. From the lowest to the highest. Can you say their names with me? Go. Ground
Ground
G,
G.
bass C,
Bass C.
bass F,
Bass F.
middle C,
Middle C.
treble G,
Treble G.
treble C,
Treble C.
flag F.
And flag F.
Okay, let's practice now. I'll name any one of these guide notes on the staff, and I'd like you to point to the one I name. Can you point to bass C?
Bass C. This
If
one.
you're pointing here, you're correct.
Ay.
Can you point to flag
pala.
F? If you're pointing here, you're correct. Can you point to ground G? If you're pointing here, you're correct. Can you point to treble C?
Treble C. This one.
If you're pointing here, you're correct. Can you point to bass F? If you're pointing here, you are correct. Now let's try it on the piano keys. Can you point to ground G?
Ground
If you're
G.
pointing here, you're correct. Now point to treble C.
Treble C.
If you're pointing right here, you're correct.
Ah, ito pala.
Can you point to bass F? If you're pointing here, you're correct. Can you point to flag F?
Flag F. To.
If you're pointing here, you're correct. Now let's make this a little bit trickier. I'm going to take off all of these guide notes on the piano, except for middle C, which you'll use as a reference. Now, I'll point to one of these notes on the staff,
No,
and I'd
that's
like
it.
you to point to the correct note on the keyboard. For example, if I point right here, show me where you would point on the piano. If you're pointing right here, you're correct. This is treble C.
Treble C.
Now let's try another one. Where would you point on the piano if I'm pointing here on the staff?
Bass C.
If you're pointing right here to bass C, you're correct. Here's another one. Where would you point for this note?
F flag
If
F.
you're pointing way up here to flag F, you're correct. Remember, to find flag F, you have to pass this treble C and then keep on going to the
Flag
next F.
F.
Show me where you would point for this note.
May ganyan-ganyan
If you're
pala
pointing here to
mag-aral ng
bass F,
piano.
you're correct.
Thank God, parang din ako nag-aral ng
Let's try one more.
lesson talaga ng piano.
Where would you point for this note?
Abuti na lang may YouTube.
If you're pointing right here to ground G, you're correct.
Ground G. C.
Great job working on the guide notes of the grand staff today.
Ulit.
Remember, you
Kailangan
can
ko
download
pag-aralan
how to
ulit.
find these notes on the piano. Middle C goes right here. It's the C nearest the middle of my piano. You can kind of think of middle C as the border between two great kingdoms. All on the right of middle C is the kingdom of treble clef, where everyone speaks in a high voice like Mickey Mouse. And then below middle C, this is the kingdom of bass clef, where everyone talks like this. So to find treble G, you find the G nearest above middle C. And bass F is the F, the nearest F below middle C.
Below.
Now let's look at some other guide notes on the staff. The C's. So I'm going to take away treble G and bass F. Let's find where the C's are. Do you remember where treble C is?
Bass C.
If you're pointing right here, you're correct.
And
Treble C is three space notes up, and it's the nearest C above middle C on the piano, too. Right here. This is treble C. Take these off for a minute.
treble C. Middle C.
Now, do you remember where bass C is? That's right, it's three spaces down. It's the opposite of treble C, which is three spaces up. And on your piano, bass C will be the nearest C below middle C in the kingdom of bass clef.
C is bass C.
Now let's talk about a couple other guide notes. This I call flag F. It's the F line at the top of the treble clef staff. The way you'll remember that is think of this as a long
Kailangan po matutunan ka
flagpole,
para sa
and this loop at the
music
top
theory
is
para
a
mas
flag,
ma-easy kang
and it goes right through the
magbasa
F line.
ng
This F on the
mga
piano
piano
is
notes,
way up
music
here
notes.
above middle C, above treble
Tulad
C,
po sa mga
all the way
church
up here.
song na may
Flag
music
F.
note.
Now the line way at the bottom of bass clef I call ground
Ground
G.
G.
G for ground, because it's at the very bottom, just like the ground is at the bottom of the sky.
Sa gitara
On the
din po,
piano, you can
maganda
find
din po
ground
ito,
G way
pwede din
down
po itong
here
i-apply.
below bass C.
Kaya mas maganda po talaga mag-aral ng
Now let's
music
put all of our
theory.
guide notes back. I have treble G and bass F. We'll put them back on our piano as well.
Treble G, treble G, and
You'll
bass
notice I
F.
made the F's blue. We have a bass F down here in the kingdom
Ay,
of bass clef,
nakakalito
and we have a
naman.
flag
Basta
F
ng
way up here in treble clef. We also have two G's, a treble G, and then way down here, a
treble
bass
G,
G. And then we have three
treble
C's
G.
as guide notes.
treble G,
Let's practice naming all of the guide notes from the lowest to the
ground
highest
G.
on the staff. I'll say it, and then you repeat after me. Ground G,
ground G,
bass C,
bass C,
bass F,
F,
middle C,
middle C,
treble G,
treble G,
treble C,
and
flag
flag
F. Now let's name them together on the piano. From the lowest to the highest. Can you say their names with me? Go. ground G,
ground G,
bass C,
bass C,
bass F,
bass F,
middle C,
middle C,
treble G,
treble G,
treble C,
treble C, and
flag F.
flag
Okay, let's practice now. I'll name any one of these guide notes on the staff, and I'd like you to point to the one I name. Can you point to bass C?
F, bass C.
If you're pointing here, you're correct. Can you point to flag F?
Flag F.
If you're pointing here, you're correct. Can you point to ground G?
Ground G. This.
If you're pointing here, you're correct. Can you point to treble C?
Treble C.
If you're pointing here, you're correct. Can you point to bass F?
Bass F.
If you're pointing here, you are correct. Now let's try it on the piano keys.
Okay.
Can you point to ground G?
Ground G.
If you're pointing here, you're correct. Now point to treble C.
Treble C.
If you're pointing right here, you're correct.
Dito pa na.
Can you point to bass F?
Bass F. To.
If you're pointing here, you're correct. Can you point to flag F?
Flag F.
If you're pointing here, you're correct. Now let's make this a little bit trickier. I'm going to take off all of these guide notes on the piano, except for middle C, which you'll use as a reference. Now, I'll point to one of these notes on the staff, and I'd like you to point to the correct note on the keyboard. For example, if I point right here, show me where you would point on the piano.
C.
If you're pointing right here, you're correct. This is treble C.
Treble C.
Now let's try another one. Where would you point on the piano if I am pointing here on the
C.
staff?
Bass C.
If you're pointing right here to bass C, you're correct. Here's another one. Where would you point for this note?
Flag F.
If you're pointing way up here to flag F, you're correct. Remember, to find flag F, you have to pass this treble C and then keep on going to the next F.
Flag F.
Show me where you would point for this note. If you're pointing here to bass F, you're correct. Let's try one more. Where would you point for this note?
G.
If you're pointing right here to ground G, you're correct. Great job working on the guide notes of the grand staff today. Remember,
Okay. Kapagod din pala. Ground G. Ground G. Ground G. Bass C. Bass F. Middle C. Treble G. Treble C and flag F. Okay. Tomorrow ulit. Exercise tomorrow ulit. Bukas ulit mag-aaral. Thank you po sa nanonood at abangan nyo po kung kailan ako magiging magaling sa pagpiano. Pero ewan ko pa, sana po talaga marami ako matutunan hanggang December. Yun po talaga yung goal ko ngayon. Pagdating ng 2022, sana po talaga ay nakakatugtog na ako ng mga songs, mga Christian songs po. Hindi ko po alam kung ano po talaga. Basta wait nyo lang po kung ano po yung progress ko. Thank you sa lahat. And God bless po. Ingat po kayo palagi, lalo po sa panahon ngayon. And at always po mag-pray. Last na po. Bakit kaya nagap? Last na po. Exercise ulit tayo. Sana, paano ba yung aking inaral kanina? GD. Sana po hindi ko makalimutan talaga. Kapag po gusto niyo po maging musician, talaga po lifetime yung pag-practice, lalo na po sa mga beginners. Dapat po, kahit po, basta araw-araw, kahit 5 minutes or 10 minutes, importante po yun. It's better than sa best ka lang magpapractice sa isang linggo. Sana po ay may natutunan kayo kahit isa, at sana po ay mag-subscribe kayo, mag-comment kung ano po yung dapat kong i-improve, kung ano po yung mga idea na pwede nyo pong suggest sa akin, kung anong mga dapat kong aralin. Comment lang po kayo below. Hihintayin ko po yun. Dati po hindi po talaga ako mabilis magganito, pero ngayon po medyo nakakaya na. Saka dati po talaga hindi ko kaya ng sabay ang kamay ko. Ngayon okay na siya. Ayun po, maraming salamat po sa inyo. God bless po sa inyong lahat. Goodbye. Bye-bye po.